Well, like, in the past, I've made videos that have included elements of Education Scotland on their website and some of the information and whatnot, PDFs, etc., that are included within said websites. But they have sunk to a new low recently in their talk of Prevent, which is a UK counter-terrorism strategy developed to tackle threats that Scotland and the rest of the UK face from a range of extremist and terrorist ideologies, groups, individuals. Prevent is one strand of the strategy and sits alongside pursue, protect and prepare. You scroll down, of course, and it goes on to say that schools have an important role to play by providing a safe space for learners to explore, discuss and debate the range of social and political issues in our rapidly changing world, With it being important to develop young people's skills to be able to engage as active citizens in a democratic society, developing critical thinking skills so that they become resilient to and equipped to challenge divisive viewpoints and hate speech. So right there right off the bat, as I've pointed out in other videos that I have included this bullshit in, not Prevent per se, but the Education Scotland, all these talking points, the word salad, etc., what they all go on about citizenship, global citizenship, learning for sustainability, words to that effect, and then they always emphasise citizens. You're not a Scot anymore, you're a citizen. Divisive viewpoints, hate speech. Well, you need to be equipped to challenge that, and essentially you need to be politicised. It's essentially you need to be weaponised to go against the anti-progressive, to go against anybody that challenges the progressive status quo, so to speak. And now it goes on to say here that, and I must add as well, though, it's quite ironic that they always brag about teaching critical thinking, but there is no critical thinking anymore. You are taught what to believe. Staff should have a clear understanding of how the holding of views which endorse extremism can lead to safeguarding issues for the well-being of the individual, young person. Local authorities would therefore be expected to demonstrate an awareness of the Prevent strategy in their work to implement and getting it right for every child. With the curriculum, social studies, health, well-being and religious moral education having particular roles to play in helping children and young people develop their understanding of the world by learning about other people, cultures, beliefs, attitudes and values. And here's it here, yeah. Critical thinking. Yeah. Anyway, then you come down here, of course, and it says, key Prevent policies and documents. How extremists are using COVID-19 to promote disinformation, misinformation, and conspiracy theories. Now, when it comes to COVID, I have to be very careful what I fucking say these days, considering the fact that one of the last videos that I made on this subject got me a strike. But, so, I'll try and bite my tongue, but I've got it up on the screen here. And it says, how extremists are using COVID-19 to promote disinformation, misinformation and conspiracy theories. Briefing note for schools and further education providers. Anyway, this briefing note is aimed at senior leaders, teachers and safeguarding leads. So essentially head teachers of course, and safeguarding leads I would assume would be those that are in schools to look after children with behavioural difficulties, etc. Could be wrong. It provides a short summary of the ways in which extremists have responded to COVID-19, highlighting the additional radicalization risks for children and young people, and recommended actions that settings can consider. During the pandemic, we have seen a significant decline in Prevent referrals, raising concerns about the welfare of vulnerable children and young people. It is important that settings consider the radicalization concerns, particularly as children and young people have been exposed to disinformation, misinformation and conspiracy theories, sometimes called fake news, as extremists seek to exploit COVID-19 to spread hateful narratives and increase mistrust and division. When they talk about fake news, this is just a wee tangent here, but I remember making a video on this, the Myths of Immigration booklets that came out a few years ago, where I, as I say, made a video on them, where they've got one specifically for fucking primary children, primary 3 upwards, then they've got one for early years and early primary, nursery to primary 2, secondary and further education. You can download the Myths of Immigration booklets below, and here they are here. And they go on to talk about fake news and why do they do this? They want to eradicate the so-called divisive opinions that are out there by the racists, etc. This is the brainwashing fucking children. That's what they're doing. But it goes on. welcomes and values a diverse, inclusive society, and we welcome refugees and asylum seekers to Scotland. So in order to ensure that the next generation do exactly the same as the activists want, we need to brainwash them. And the same could be said for this, fake news. Who determines what's fake news? But anyway, what do the terms disinformation, misinformation, and conspiracy theories mean? Disinformation being describing fake or misleading stories created and shared deliberately, often by a writer who might have a financial or political motive. Well, that's like 99% of all the progressive dribble that comes out on a daily fucking basis. Misinformation also describes fake or misleading stories, but in this case, the stories may not have been deliberately created or shared with the intention to mislead. Conspiracy theories offer a simplifying model for things that cannot be explained or easily understood. They typically involve an alternative explanation for an event or situation to those provided by governments and official international bodies, and sometimes suggesting a group, individual, organisation is responsible or hiding information from the public, I should say. I'd say that the conspiracy theories, and as I said, I had to be very careful what I say these days because I seem to be walking on thin ice on YouTube. But I'd say the conspiracy theorists have been right on a lot of things regarding COVID, wouldn't you? Just saying. I didn't say anything, Susan. Don't dare get me for that one. No. What are the radicalization risks related to the impact of COVID-19? Exposure to misleading and hateful content. Young people may have been exposed to fake stories or conspiracy theories about COVID-19, which attribute blame on minority groups. Engagement with extremist individuals. Young people may have become exposed to or engaged with extremist organisations or individuals, especially online. Increased vulnerability to radicalisation. COVID-19 may have increased vulnerability to radicalisation as children and young people may feel isolated, anxious, frustrated and angry. Right? Okay, we get the point. But that's not where the point of this video is actually aimed at. So it goes on to say here, what have been the extremist themes during the pandemic? During COVID-19 pandemic, quote unquote pandemic, is fucking bollocks. False and misleading narratives about the virus have spread, particularly online, often to place blame on outgroups and minorities. This can further incite hatred, justify violence and divide communities. While some of this occurs on popular social media platforms, it can also be found on lesser known, unregulated platforms. These sites include easy available extreme and conspiratorial content. The Commission for Countering Extremism has highlighted numerous examples of prominent extremist narratives related to the pandemic. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories blaming the Jewish community for spreading the virus or suggesting COVID-19 is a Jewish plot. Claims that Muslims have flouted the social distancing rules. Narratives promoting anti-Chinese hatred. Daesh-inspired narratives claiming that the pandemic is divine punishment for the West's sinful behaviours. Never fucking heard that one in my life. I'm just going to be honest. It's the first time I've ever heard that, and I spent a lot of time on the internet in so-called conspiratorial circles. Nonetheless, extreme right-wing conspiracies claiming that society is collapsing and that right-wing terrorism can accelerate its end through inciting social conflict and violence and ultimately a race war. Wider conspiracy theories relating to 5G, test and protect, and anti-vax, which can be detrimental to public health messaging. All because they're going against the status quo. They're going against the narrative. Test and protect and anti-vaccination, yeah? You don't have to be an anti-vaxxer to be against the COVID-19 vaccination. And as for test and protect, that's just fucking tracking you. That's all that is. You've essentially given the government a back door into telling you who you associate with if you're dumb enough to download that shite, because they require you give them information of the people that you've been in close contact with, etc. If you ever diagnose, which you probably will if you take one of their flimsy tests, and then they go around phoning everyone. It gives the government and whatnot, my view, the ability to see who you associate with. But I'm more about there's more the vaccination thing that really pisses me off with this. An untested vaccination when the trials ain't even done until 2023, I believe. Gene-altering vaccinations, and you're an extremist? if you don't fucking buy into it, well, what actions can educators, school leaders take to prevent children and young people being radicalised during this time? Review your school or setting safeguarding risk assessment processes or procedures to ensure that they include the risk of radicalisation. Consider the impact of COVID-19 and the information in this briefing, as well as any local changes in risk or community tensions. Ensure staff are familiar with the issues raised in this briefing to increase their confidence in recognising concerns. Ensure both staff and learners are clear in their reporting procedures to raise concerns. Dedicate time to rebuilding relationships between children and young people and trusted adults and positive role models, which may have been absent during the pandemic. This absence may have led to extremist narratives and individuals who are offering an explanation for the pandemic, quote, quote, increasing an appeal and going unchallenged. Have safe space discussions with learners and encourage staff to adopt active listening approaches and seek advice if they are concerned about a child or young person. So, and then what exactly? And then what? So a child expresses concern, let's just say, for example, about the vaccination. You're going to sit them down in some little fucking safe space. You're going to have conversations with them to try and get them back on track. You're going to try and convince them that they have been subjected to fake news. Why, of course? Because what they are espousing when they portray anti-vax tendencies, anti-vax, quote-unquote, of course, you classify them as extremists, or at the very least, you classify the people that are around them, that have been around them during their constant isolation, thanks to these fucking lockdowns. You consider these people to be extreme. So what would be the next step, of course? Let's just say little Johnny comes to the teacher and expresses concerns about the vaccine. You try your damnedest to convince little Johnny that there's nothing wrong with the vaccine because Nicola fucking Sturgeon told you to, of course, in her documentation. But he still doesn't agree with you. What happens then? Do you go to the parents? Do you report the parents for potentially putting this into little Johnny's head? Or do you refer little Johnny to Prevent? Because he's a radical. He's an extremist because he's expressed anti-vax tendencies. He's against track and trace. Never mind all these other ridiculous examples that they have given here. I mean, half of them are utter shit. Who the fuck believes anyone has ever said that Daesh inspired narratives claiming that the pandemic is divine, yada yada yada, or narratives promoting anti-Chinese hatred? Fuck off. You know, this here, test to protect and anti-vax, which can be detrimental to public health. Wider conspiracy theories, 5G as well, of course. Test and protect, anti-vax, you know. Think about it, man. The Commission for Countering Extremism have highlighted the numerous examples of prominent extremist narratives. It's an extremist narrative to be against the COVID vaccine. You're an extremist now. What should staff do if they have concerns? If you're concerned about a learner who may be vulnerable to radicalisation, your first course of action should be to follow your school or setting safeguarding. What can I do to support the young people I work with? Further support and guidance on extremism, radicalisation and the Prevent duty can be found in a National Improvement Hub. Additional information can also be found at Educate Against Hate. Hate. Let's talk about it. Educational Training Foundation and London Grid for Learning. And in this bit here, I absolutely love this bit. So it says, here is a list of useful resources that can help students identify misleading content. The Share Checklist, a government website offering 5 easy steps to follow to identify which information might be right. Oh, well, the Guardian's always right because they promote or provide their sources. But the Guardian, of course, they're just part in the agenda. I'm just using the Guardian as an example. So what if a source isn't exactly what you could consider verifiable, or if a source has been deemed untrustworthy by the status quo? Can't follow that, kids. The BBC, this site offers a range of resources in understanding and responding to fake news. The BBC! Oh, God. Well, I hope the children have these fucking days. The BBC. Really? The BBC. You say BBC that in the space of, a month hasn't even covered remotely the last 2 anti-lockdown protests that were occurring? The same BBC that's in Bill Gates' back fucking pocket, literally. He's funded them. Oh, wow. The same BBC that is blatantly biased to the progressive, quote-unquote, status quo. But, of course, the BBC are there to make sure that the facts are presented on the table. National Literacy Trust, the News Literacy Project, Shout Out UK, Civic Online, the UN. Oh, of course, the fucking UN will be in here. You know, I love this bit here. That, you know, so this is on the UN's website. Pause before sharing to help stop viral spread of COVID-19 misinformation. You know, the latest message from the UN's verified initiative wants people around the world to pause before sharing emotionally charged content on social media. One of the ways misinformation is spreading is the way people are sharing. Melissa Fleming, who oversees the UN's global communications efforts, said on the eve of the pause campaign's launch, chosen to coincide with Social Media Day. The idea of pause is take care before you share. We hope that take care before you share starts to be a social norm that people have in the back of their heads, and that will enable a personal behavioural change. Of course, because this is all this has ever been about, the whole fucking thing. Behavioural change, yeah, but and as our social media platforms and whatnot working in tandem with the United Nations, it just begs belief to me. It really does. But yeah, sorry, that was I've kind of digressed now. I want to keep this video short and to the point, but you get the point, I think. I hope, anyway. This shit now. So if you're a parent and your child expresses anti-vax, quote unquote anti-COVID vaccination tendencies, let's just say, you might have to knock the fucking door. Just saying.